With this increase in population density enabled by money, do you think this also sort of incentivizes people to develop normative structures, moralities, like things to get along a little better? Because you're like, all of a sudden you're living on top of each other.
Yeah. And I think this is like a coevolution of, many of the properties of civilization that are required for us to build more and more advanced and larger civilizations. Like as soon as you have this dynamic of tribes starting to live in closer proximity because they have a concept of money that facilitates that, now you've got new problems that they were probably experimented with, and then maybe it took thousands of years to figure out how to have a model that allows for you to progress to the next level. But maybe you're living with 3 tribes or 10 tribes in the same valley, and you have to figure out, okay, who's the big chief, and how do you deal with tribute between multiple tribes? How do we navigate that and have a process for that? And trial by error, you figure that out. And I think that's part of why it took us tens of thousands of years to get to this point in civilization. Is nobody knows how to, in that context, how to build a civilization, but you're going to figure it out based on what works and what gives you a competitive edge against neighboring multi-tribe units.
Right. Because there's one other thing here. I've heard the theory that, I don't know, tell me if this is a mainstream anthropological thing or not. I'm not sure. I just heard this somewhere and I can't tell you where. The theory was that Homo sapiens outcompeted Neanderthals because they adopted monotheism first.
Yeah, that's a popular one. I also don't remember where that comes from originally, but that's a very popular explanation. And I think we have had a lot of theories, a lot of possible explanations for why did Homo sapiens outcompete Neanderthals and the handful of other early human species that existed on the planet for the last 2 million years. And then all of a sudden Homo sapiens take over. So why? That's the core question of this piece. And monotheism, theism, really, and shared myth have been some of the explanations, but they don't have like a satisfying like mechanic for like why that would give an edge. I mean, it's kind of hand wavy of like, okay, yeah, we're all on the same page a little bit more if we believe in the same gods. Yeah,
I was going to say it's like a softer claim than the money claim in a way, because it's the ability to collaborate towards a shared purpose that allows the larger group to be more socially integrated.
Right.
And so monotheism would provide that to some extent, but with like looser incentives, whereas money is much more of a real network effect, right?
Yes. And bottoms up too. You know, like from an individual's perspective, like economic motivations are what dictate what you do. Like whether or not you're thinking about it in terms of economics or not. Like, are you going to go venture out to try to go, bag a deer up the valley, or are you going to go do something else with your time? Like you're calculating what's in your interest. And the shared myth or theism interpretation doesn't have that. It just suggests that the group would be a little bit more cohesive because you share the same gods.
Yes.
And so I think it's part of it.
Yeah.
But I think that pointing at that as the reason is less satisfying to me.
Yes. Yeah, it feels a little bit like the tail wagging the dog, perhaps. Completely. Because one of the common denominators between money and religion, and this will be like a Szabo term, is that they both enable trust minimization, which is another way of saying like it reduces the cost of developing rapport or trust between people, right? If we're both Christians and we know we're going to do, I can generally expect you to follow these patterns and you can do the same for me. So there's not a lot of difficulty in us aligning our efforts towards productive ends. That's there with religion, but with money, it's tighter. And if anything, I would think it was almost like the money came first and then maybe the monotheism follows
Yeah. That would be in line with my hypothesis here of money is really the enabler that then makes it possible for larger social groups to live together. And then in that context, having shared gods starts to help with the cohesiveness.
Yes.
But it's not the reason that tribes were able to come together.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great point. And this is just coming to me, Mircea Eliade. He's written a lot of books on mythology. And one of my biggest takeaways from reading some of his books was that mythology tended to echo the technological paradigm. So like if they're hunters and gatherers and all their gods were like hunter, gatherer, god, and then if you become agricultural, then they have agricultural gods. So it's like, there's always the mythology becomes a representation of like the technological realities they're living in day to day. And so maybe money is one of these technological realities that just hasn't been given enough, taken seriously enough to maybe contribute to the development of monotheism.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think that's like an overarching theme here is that for whatever reason, these shell beads that show up in cave site excavations are overlooked for the importance that they likely played in our species having an advantage over other early human species. Because, I guess it's easy to think, okay, it's a necklace. Like, okay, that's just something that Homo sapiens were doing because they wanted to look good.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a great little quote that I poke fun at in the piece where the most recent big discovery of shell bead jewelry from a cave site in Morocco that's 142,000 years old. So it's the oldest known example of this behavior. The co-author of that study speculates that this jewelry was probably made as a way to signal the individual's identity to strangers because you don't need to do that to your mother. It's like, it's not, okay, so you think that this incredible find, which is actually the earliest known proto money in human history, is just some cute bit of fashion that early man was doing. It's a shame.
Well, and it also, again, tail wagging the dog, because you're not really going to have fashion proper without money.
No, and we've found shell bead jewelry in cave sites all over Africa, all over Europe and Asia, over more than 100,000 years of human history. And so you're telling me that they all just like to look good for strangers? Like, that's a bit of a stretch.
And they weren't even able to cooperate with strangers if they didn't have money, right?
That's right.
The point. So that's so interesting. One other thing that's coming to mind here, because we've talked about money's indispensability to the even the starting of civilization and then the ongoing improvement of the process of civilization, right? And, I've been reading Saifedean's book recently, The Principles of Economics. And one of the points he continually goes back to that Hoppe and others cite is that the process of civilization is a reflection of time preference, right? So it's like individuals have time preference and then the collective reflection of that in the market pricing systems, the natural interest rate, and then the process of civilization sort of follows from it. There was something that, and money, obviously, like once you get into these monetary economies, time preference being the rate at which you discount the future to the present, right? So the more uncertain the future, the more you would discount it, basically. And so money is this thing that lets you discount the future less, like to the extent that it's working. You can just go and just grow apples, for instance, and you know that if you sell them for money, that you can use that money, save up that money to go and buy a house or do some other long distance future goal. Whereas outside of a money economy, you can't think that far ahead, basically. And this was tying to something, I think Nietzsche said this, that like his idea was that the creditor-debtor relationship was like the first impetus for human beings to think about their future self in that way. And so I guess I'm wondering here, like, are we describing humans that kind of I don't know if discover time preference is the right, because they don't really discover time preference. It's not like they're sitting around saying like, hey, all of a sudden I realize my future self likes this more, but you're coming to realize through using, your day-to-day transactions with money that you can now accumulate this stuff and save up for bigger things and do longer term projects. Is that what we're describing? Like people start to come online with the realities of time preference through money?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think probably next we'll get into the like beginnings of this money and like how that would have developed. But once you have that, then you want more. Like once you have the concept of money, you value money, shell beads in this case. You want more of that, and you are probably starting to think about, okay, how can I get more value?
Yeah.
And now you're starting to think in terms of capitalism.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's a means to all material ends. So no matter what you're trying to do in life, it's like you can now, it simplifies the process of fulfilling your dream, basically.
Yep. And how to make your life better and how to, make your kin better off.
Right.
So, it sort of dovetails with a lot of like Dawkins' work of, the selfish gene and wanting to make sure that, the actions that you take help propagate your lineage.
Yes.
Right. And money is a tool for doing that.
Yes.
And valuing, once you have the concept of money, then it becomes clear that that's a way to get an edge in life.
Yes.
And I think that's very natural. I think that's part of humanity's strengths and our competitive advantage. But you have to get that concept of money first.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that we don't think enough about in terms of, we don't think enough about, what is money? And we don't think enough about what does it mean to have the concept of money when your competition does not?
Yes. Yeah. It's a great point. It's another one of these things we kind of take for granted. Like we don't know what it's like to think without natural language. Like it's almost impossible to even think what that would be like. And money maybe is not that extreme. You can imagine what it's like to not have money, but when you consider how your day-to-day life is carried out, that's not possible without money. It also gives, I guess, people this ability to start, again, back to time preference. Like once you can accumulate money and you can calculate in money, you start thinking more about the future. You think beyond your own life. You start thinking about your legacy. Oh, I can accumulate these things to pass forward to my kin. And then they can, layer by layer, build up things of really substantial value.
Yeah. And that's part of what Szabo lays out of, what's the immediate advantage? What's the reason for carrying, several shell bead necklaces on your body at all times? And the reality is like, you could get in a pinch, you could run into a bad situation. Maybe your tribe dies, and suddenly you need to like befriend another tribe, or maybe you need to just get some resources, and you have this stored value hanging around your neck that you can put to work to save your life. Yes. And that's a huge evolutionary advantage right there.
Yes, absolutely. So many definitions of money are coming to mind now as you say that. I had a biologist on here and he described money as liquid fitness.
Love it.
So it's like, in a Darwinian sense, it allows you to get fit to almost any situation. As you were describing there, it's like an insurance policy against uncertainty itself.
Yes.
Like no matter what happens, it's like, well, you have the widest set of options possible if you're holding money to deal with whatever that eventuality is. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.